prefer the men. That's hysterical. Paris. The men are more useful because you get the entire contour of the body if I'm cutting out. I'm assuming I'm going to cut them out, but maybe I shouldn't make that assumption. I'm still at that point where I'm just enjoying them. It's a strange and paradoxical thing to have a book you really enjoy looking at and then destroying it. But sacrifice is necessary. I think it's to do with the sacrificial. It's to do with violence. That somehow, if you violate an image, you cut it in some way, and then you bring it into connection with another, you seem to be healing it, bringing it back into a recognizable image. But because of the discontinuities, it doesn't heal. And that seam is so central, the violence of that seam, that we as the spectators have to overlook that and create our own connection between the two sides. But if you're not allowed to make that connection because it's already too well made, then you're not participating in the creation of the image, and the image becomes mine rather than yours. But the moment you create that image, you heal that wound. I often used to describe my images as kind of like orphans, overlooked and ignored in life, but taken care of by myself, but only for destruction purposes, like children's homes. I have a box of just fights. Fights are really good because obviously they're not really fighting. A punch is never thrown, so it's more a mime, a static mime. If I were to cut this, I would probably keep that hand in, and the remainder would be a silhouette. And then I'd decide about this hand. I sometimes like having just hands. Yeah, there's a nice one. You see, there is a category somewhere here of sleeping people. Clearly they're not asleep. They're posing with their eyes closed. No one looks like quite that elegant when they're asleep. Oh, maybe they do, I don't know. I want to show you where it all began, my very first film still, which I didn't find actually. It was found by my ex-wife, at that time my girlfriend, Rosetta Brooks, and she gave it to me this way up. The wrong way up. Something in me decided that I shouldn't turn it the right way around. That moment of misrecognition I wanted to somehow preserve, where an image is somehow caught between two worlds, the world of the reflection and the world of the reality. And I think everything I've done goes back to that, the single first image. And the power that it exerted on me at the time. I believed that somehow the image, for all its debasement within contemporary culture, could also be a guide. In a strange way, I thought the stereotype image could in some ways reveal something archetypal, but it could be actually a spiritual guide of some sort to try and understand the world in a different perspective than one that's simply trying to use it. But that, to me, seemed to be the project, and I invested wholeheartedly in that. It's just these tiny little elements, the relationship of a millimetre or two of the pupil and the extinction of the eye there, and that tiny highlight on the top of the lips, which suggests the overlap of the lipstick. There's something about those two things that really worked with this particular image. With the blinds, I felt as though I was closing down a world. I was an act of destruction. Whereas with the loves, I felt there was a form of redemption going on. And I'm always looking for redemption in the end. I think all my work is about trying to redeem images. I mean, these images are the kind of stereotypical litter, the aftermath of communication. And I'm trying to reinvest them with life. Certainly lockdown was very much connected with absence. And I suppose that period was also the period in which I was beginning to reread fairy tales. And I became very interested in particularly The Extraordinary Tale of Peter Schlemihl. In the story, a grey man proposes to the impoverished Peter. If he could have his shadow, he would give him worldly wealth, and so he gets worldly wealth and loses his shadow. But in a strange way, this disembodiment becomes something he can't take. It's as though he becomes almost transparent, unseen. So then he goes in pursuit of the man to try and recover his shadow. Incidentally, I kind of identified not with Peter in the story, I identified with the grey man, because I think I'm a collector of shadows in many ways, seeking embodiment. But anyway, Peter does regain his shadow, but somehow in the process, and I can't actually remember the narrative details, he gains two shadows. And that's where I got the idea of calling this the Double Shadow series. Yes, this is a room I don't go into too often. We call it the Cabinet of Horrors. It's a collection of objects which have a slightly more obvious relationship with the uncanny. Around here, where the studio is located in St Leonard's, is an absolute treasure trove of such objects. And one of the ones I found was a death mask. And barely ever do I come in here, and barely ever do I see this dear lady here, or the absence of this dear lady. But it is such a compelling thing. It seems as though all the first images of the human face were essentially facial reconstructions, incorporating the skull, and that somehow the dawn of the age of the image coincided with burial rituals. Hans Belting sees this as the origins of portraiture, the origins of the representation of the face, which has led all the way through to the mass media world in which we look at faces every day on our iPhones, on TV, etc. And I find it in ancient objects. I go to ethnological museums and I can see it. I can see the strangeness of early images. And it's there present as like a ghost inhabiting the culture that we live in. There is an ultimate mystery that we are no longer aware of. The image we've taken for granted so much as a presence in our life that we no longer see it. And I want to make that visible in some way. And when I say make visible, I want to make that strangeness visible, to break through the seal of indifference that comes with familiarity, you might might say. Yeah, I spent so much of my life secluding images like this from the temporality of cinema, from their disappearance in succession, to make them somehow appear and be for conscious vision. And I decided it would be really interesting to take a multiplicity of images and see what happens if I cinematicize them. In other words, project them at 24 frames a second. And I came across this book, the Stallion Annual for 1990, and immediately I did that. I saw the possibility of making a film. This is number one, Horse. A sort of homage to Muybridge in some way. And of course there was a central still object, so then it occurred to me, what would happen if I took a multiplicity of just random film stills, my collection, just take a stack off the shelf and just put those in 24 frames a second, and that was Blind, my second film, which is, in a way, the real breakthrough film for me. It's kind of like a cinematic Rorschach. The disorder here is just incredible. I digress almost as quickly as I pursue the search. I do like women holding guns. It's an interesting phallic symbol, obviously. That's probably one of the most extreme dislocations of scale between the eyes and the face. But I think it's magical. The eyes of sacred figures are not there to be seen by the worshipper, but they're there to be present in order for the worshipper to be seen by them. And that, for some reason, seemed to be very important. And once again, I tried to find a point of alignment between the eyes of the comedian in this case, and in this case, the eyes of the Virgin Mary. What interests me about the comic series and the successive portrait series is this intermingling of the sacred gaze with the profane. I felt as though I was focusing more and more on this tiny 2mm aperture of looking out, looking in, and that dialogue. We're desperate to be able to see another's world. And it's only by understanding our separateness, oddly enough, that we can find a more profound form of union, in my belief. It sort of ticks all the boxes, really. I like piano players for some reason. I have a collection of people who are blind or blindfolded, but this is, I think, the first in which there's just a single eye patch like that. But it's strange the way this white centre, or this grey centre, which merges with, it almost disappears, is surrounded by seeming frenzied violin playing, a weird sense of stillness and movement simultaneously, which makes that image really ambiguous. I see my work as a sort of liberation of the image, as image, from communications and essentially from language. The image is always chained to a narrative, to meaning, to language. And it's never free to be itself. So we're always looking, we use the image as a sort of transparent conduit, which we believe is allowing us to see the reality of the world. But it's not. It's a world of shadows, of illusions, of phantoms. And I'm trying to restore these supposed realities to their genuine status as these mysteries.